This is vailychat.
Usually when you think about a mountain ski town, the image that comes to mind is this pristine, like almost untouchable snow globe, you know?
Right, yeah, like a postcard.
Exactly. You drive up the mountain pass, the snow starts falling, the ski lifts are spinning, and the chaos of the rest of the world just sort of, I don't know, fades away into the background.
It is entirely designed to feel like a manufactured escape. I mean, these communities are fundamentally built around leisure and, frankly, isolation from the daily grind.
Right. But looking through the stack of sources you provided for today's custom-tailored deep dive, that snow globe is being violently shaken.
Oh, absolutely shattered in some way.
Yeah. So welcome in. Today is Monday, May 4, 2026, and our mission today is to explore a truly fascinating theme playing out in real time in the Eagle Valley.
And it really is a perfect case study.
It is. We are looking at a community navigating massive historic global geopolitical shocks while simultaneously fighting these unprecedented local environmental crises.
Right, the environmental factors are huge right now.
Huge. And somehow, in the middle of all of this chaos, they are still finding the bandwidth to break athletic records and throw a massive 60th birthday party.
It is a phenomenal study in resilience.
Yeah.
You rarely see this level of tension between macro-level global dread and very granular, almost stubborn local grit.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand what is happening on the ground in a Colorado mountain town today, we actually have to start this journey halfway across the planet.
Right, the macro-level stuff.
Exactly. Specifically, we have to look at the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, the geopolitical flashpoint there has fundamentally altered the physical and economic reality of global travel.
Which is wild to think about.
It is, and by extension, it is threatening the very lifeblood of mountain tourism.
Right. So going through the reporting in your sources, the U.S.-Iran conflict has escalated to the point of a full naval blockade in the strait.
A total shutdown.
Yeah. And just to keep things entirely impartial here and stick exactly to the facts provided in the material, the Trump administration initiated this blockade to physically stop ships from entering or leaving the area after peace talks in Islamabad completely collapsed.
Right. Those talks broke down, and this was the immediate result.
And the ripple effect of that single geopolitical maneuver has triggered a historic, severe global energy shock.
You really have to look at the underlying mechanics of global energy markets to understand why this hit so fast.
Because it was basically overnight, right?
Pretty much. I mean, physical oil takes weeks to move across the oceans in tankers. But the price of oil trades instantaneously on tomorrow's fear.
Oh, that makes sense. The speculation.
Exactly. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most critical bottlenecks for the global oil supply. So the second you choke that off, the speculative markets just panic.
And the aviation sector gets hit first.
Right, because aviation operates on these razor-thin fuel margins. It is one of the very first industries to suffocate when oil spikes.
The numbers in the sources are just brutal, too. Jet fuel prices have essentially doubled.
Yeah, it's staggering.
The North American index hit $4.13 a gallon, and global crude oil is sitting at over $200 a barrel.
Which is just an astronomical figure for airlines to absorb.
The major airlines are in full-blown panic mode. I mean, United Airlines is projecting an $11 billion increase in operating costs.
$11 billion, just let that sink in.
Right, and they are looking at 10 to 20% fare hikes across the board, plus they are jacking up bag fees just to survive.
And that's just the legacy carriers. The budget carriers are simply drowning right now.
Yeah, the sources note that Spirit Airlines has completely ceased operations.
Completely shut down.
Filed for bankruptcy and everything, all because they failed to secure a $500 million federal bailout.
Well, the low-margin carriers simply cannot absorb a fuel shock of this magnitude.
Because their margins were already so tiny?
Exactly. Their entire business model relies on volume and cheap operational costs. And, both of those things just vanished overnight.
Which makes the data coming out of the Eagle County Regional Airport EGE feel completely counterintuitive.
It really does defy logic at first glance.
Right. Because despite this global aviation meltdown, EGE is reportedly, quote, holding steady. In 2024, they actually saw a 24.8% jump in passenger enplanements.
And enplanements meaning paying passengers actually boarding the planes.
Right, which means they are getting close to 290,000 travelers. And right now, they are actively being buffered by state investments, including this recent grant for over $921,000.
Specifically for a new aircraft rescue firefighting vehicle, right?
Yeah, so my initial thought here looking at this like a blocked artery in the global supply chain is just, How?
How do they survive when it costs twice as much to fly there?
Exactly. The blockage is half a world away in the Middle East, but the local Eagle Valley economy feels the immediate spike in blood pressure. Mountain flights are already less efficient, right?
Oh, significantly less efficient. The air is much thinner at that altitude.
Which means you need more thrust and more fuel just to get over the peaks.
Yeah, the weather's incredibly volatile, and the performance margins for a commercial jet operating at that altitude are remarkably tight.
It's dangerous.
It takes significantly more energy and carries way more operational risk just to land a plane in the Eagle Valley compared to, say, a sea-level runway.
Right. So logically, in a catastrophic energy crisis where fuel costs just double, these high-altitude mountain routes should be the very first ones that carriers like United or Delta put on the chopping block to save money.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they absolutely would be cutting those routes if the local and state governments weren't aggressively intervening.
Oh, I see.
The survival of EGE is deeply tied to proactive strategic investments. Colorado recognizes this massive reality.
That tourism is their economy.
Exactly. Aviation enables a nearly $69 billion annual economic impact for the state. If the flights stop, the mountain economy essentially dies.
Wow, $69 billion.
Yeah. So EGE's survival relies heavily on state aeronautical backing. That $921,000 grant for the firefighting vehicle you mentioned,
Yeah.
that is just one tiny piece of a $200 million statewide investment package.
Okay, so the state is basically acting as a financial shock absorber.
That's a great way to look at it.
By publicly subsidizing the safety infrastructure and the operational capabilities of the airport, they lower the underlying financial risk for the airlines.
Right. They are making it as safe and financially viable as possible.
Ensuring that the major carriers who actually do survive this fuel crisis keep their planes pointed toward Vail.
They're controlling the few local variables they can to buffer against a global volatility they cannot control.
And there is a clear thread of urgency here that leads right into our next topic.
The environmental piece.
Yeah, because that specific grant EGE received wasn't for, terminal upgrades or a new baggage claim. It was for a firefighting rescue vehicle.
Right.
And reading through the environmental data in your sources, that detail feels incredibly uncomfortably timely.
It really does. The metrics currently coming out of Colorado are just staggering.
We are moving from the geopolitical heat in the Middle East to literal physical heat in Colorado. The entire state is currently under a wildfire red alert.
Which is severe.
Yeah, 97% of Colorado is sitting in a moderate to severe drought right now. And the 2025-2026 winter snowpack wasn't just below average.
The sources explicitly call it a catastrophic failure.
A catastrophic failure. It hovered at less than 50% of the median, and then it melted out completely by March 31st.
And we really should pause on that date, March 31st.
Because it's so early.
It is the earliest total snowpack meltout date in the recorded history of the region.
Earliest in recorded history. That is terrifying.
The mountains are completely dry months before they normally would be.
And looking at the national landscape, the consequences are already here. We are sitting at a 20-year high for early season fire activity.
There's massive numbers across the board.
Over 22,000 fires have already burned 1.8 million acres across the country, and the Eagle Valley's response to this threat has drastically shifted.
They've had to adapt.
They really have. They've moved to an initial aggressive attack strategy. They are flying multi-mission aircraft, or MMAs, equipped with infrared and high-resolution cameras.
State-of-the-art surveillance.
Yeah. They are utilizing a software program called FireGuard to mathematically model fire behavior, and they've deployed a dedicated mountain pine beetle outbreak task force to clear dead timber.
It is a massive, highly coordinated mobilization of intelligence and resources.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because when you and I usually picture local mountain firefighting, the image is grounded in manual labor.
Right. Brave locals with hoses.
Exactly. Boots on the ground, utilizing Pulaski axes, those half-axe, half-adze tools they use to manually chop roots and dig dirt trenches.
Dragging heavy hoses up incredibly steep inclines.
Right. But these sources read like a high-tech military operation. We have infrared drones, topological algorithms, and aerial surveillance. Are we treating nature like a war zone now?
Well, the state has to treat it that way, because the nature of the threat has fundamentally evolved.
How so?
The old paradigm of a seasonal fire approach, where agencies would staff up their crews in the late summer and then stand down when the winter snows arrive,
Yeah.
that is completely dead.
It's just year-round now.
The sources make it very clear that this is now a relentless year-round battle, and the advanced technology, like the MMAs and those FireGuard algorithms, represent a huge shift.
A shift away from just reacting to fires?
Exactly. A shift from reactive fighting to proactive battlefield prediction.
What actually goes into that mathematical modeling? Like, how does a computer program actually predict a wildfire before a spark even happens?
It comes down to mapping vulnerabilities. FireGuard takes real-time data, so things like wind speed, humidity, and steep topography, and it overlays that data with fuel density maps. And this is where that mountain pine beetle outbreak task force becomes critical.
Right, because of all the dead trees.
For decades, pine beetles decimated Colorado's lodgepole pine forests, leaving behind these massive, unbroken tracts of standing dead timber.
Just ghosts of forests, essentially.
Yeah. And in a normal wet year, that dead wood is a manageable risk. But in a year where the snowpack failed catastrophically by March, that dead timber isn't just wood anymore.
It's kindling.
It is an ocean of standing kindling.
So the software shows them the exact intersections where dry fuel, steep slopes, and high winds create the perfect storm.
Furthermore, it allows incident commanders to run military-grade simulations to predict where a single lightning strike or even just a tossed cigarette will cause the most catastrophic damage.
Wow.
Their goal is to neutralize the threat, either by aggressively clearing the dead fuel ahead of time or dropping aerial retardant before a fire ever has a chance to crown.
And crowning is when the fire leaps up from the brush into the actual canopy of the trees, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or the wind can catch it and just carry it for miles toward a populated area like Vail.
It is the absolute most dangerous phase of a wildfire. And once a fire crowns in high winds, ground crews with those Pulaski axes are largely powerless to stop it.
It's just moving too fast.
Way too fast.
Yeah,
This is exactly why the strategy has shifted to the sky.
It is heavy to think about, precision strikes against the environment's own vulnerabilities.
It is a dark reality.
But while the state is in the sky deploying infrared cameras to protect the macro-level forest, the local residents of the Eagle Valley are deploying themselves on the ground.
Which is such a powerful dynamic.
The contrast here between the high-tech aerial response and the grassroots manual labor of the community is just striking.
It highlights a multi-layered defense mechanism within the valley.
Looking at the community action in the sources, roughly 700 volunteers, and we're talking 4-H clubs, local business teams, and just regular residents, all participated in the 26th annual Community Pride Highway Cleanup.
Hosted by the Eagle River Coalition, right?
Right. And they went out and manually removed 10 to 15 tons of litter from Interstate 70, Highway 6, and the Eagle River itself.
That is a massive physical undertaking.
And reading the chemistry and watershed details, this is deeply critical right now because the severe drought has left the local river water volumes at half of their normal flow.
And that slow rate is everything. The physical volume of the river dictates its ability to dilute toxins.
Right. Less water means higher concentration.
Exactly. When you cut the water volume in half, the concentration of any pollutants, whether it's microplastics degrading from trash or chemical runoff from the interstate, that concentration becomes exponentially higher.
It essentially turns into a toxic soup if it's not cleaned out.
A highly vulnerable ecosystem.
Thinking about it, this community cleanup operates exactly like a biological immune system.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because the local environment, the river, is incredibly weakened by this historic drought. It has no flow, no energy to naturally flush itself out. So the community acts as the white blood cells. You have 700 people rushing to the most vulnerable areas to manually surround and remove the toxins before they can poison the broader watershed.
This raises an important question, though, about long-term habits. The data in your sources actually reveals a fascinating historical trend that builds right on that immune system analogy.
Oh, really? What trend?
Well, the sources note that this is the 26th annual event. In the early years of this cleanup, decades ago, volunteers routinely had to pull 50 tons of trash out of this area.
50 tons. Wow.
Yeah, but now, despite significant population growth in the area, they're pulling out 10 to 15 tons.
That is a massive reduction.
It demonstrates a community that has successfully transitioned from a massive disaster remediation mindset into a proactive maintenance culture.
They're staying ahead of it.
They have learned, over decades, to care for their environment before disaster strikes. They didn't wait for a 97% drought to suddenly decide the river was important.
Right, they didn't just wake up yesterday and panic.
Exactly. They built that civic muscle over 26 years. So now, when the river is at its absolute most vulnerable, the infrastructure of volunteers is already in place, trained, and ready to protect it.
It is the habit of resilience, and we are seeing that exact same psychological grit showing up in the local youth, too.
The athletic achievements.
Yeah, the sources highlight some incredible details on the athletics front. Both the Eagle Valley and Battle Mountain high school track teams just set program records at the Coleridge Invite.
And they didn't do it on a pristine, sunny day either.
No, they were battling terrible adverse spring weather conditions. We are talking freezing rain and unpredictable, just nasty winds.
It offers a very compelling micro-level contrast to the macro-level dread we discussed earlier.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you have adults worried about global oil inflation, budget airline bankruptcies, and catastrophic wildfires.
Huge existential threats.
Right. And in the middle of all that existential weight, you have teenagers lacing up their spikes in the freezing rain, determined to push their bodies to the absolute limit just to beat a personal record.
It is inspiring.
It shows a localized determination that refuses to be paralyzed by external crises.
It speaks to a certain toughness that is just fundamentally baked into the culture of the valley.
Which brings us to a moment of celebration that ties all these threads together. Because this local grit, whether it's running track in freezing rain or picking up 15 tons of trash to save a drought-stricken river, or figuring out how to keep an airport open during a global energy shock, it is deeply historical.
Very deeply rooted.
And right now, the town of Vail is officially celebrating that exact history with its 60th anniversary.
A major milestone for any municipality, but carrying significantly more weight for a town currently facing this much localized pressure.
Vail officially incorporated back in 1966, and over the last 2 decades, the sources detail that they've undergone a massive billion-dollar renewal of their town infrastructure.
They have invested heavily in their own foundation.
Yeah, and to celebrate this 60th milestone, they are installing a huge new sculpture at the Golden Peak base.
The Pat Milbury piece.
Right. Created by an artist and former pro snowboarder named Pat Milbury, the sculpture is titled, "The Only Way Down is Up."
I love that title.
Me too. It features his signature radiant heart imagery and geometric designs, funded through major partnerships with Vail Ski Resorts, Anheuser-Busch, and the Sonar Creative Collective.
But the key historical detail here is the dedication.
Yes, the sculpture serves as a direct nod to Vail's founders, Pete Seibert and Earl Eaton.
Understanding who those two men were is crucial to understanding the town's current psychology.
Pete Seibert and Earl Eaton served in the 10th Mountain Division during World War II. They trained for brutal alpine combat right nearby at Camp Hale.
Learning how to survive and fight in freezing, just completely unforgiving conditions.
And honestly, my initial reaction when reading about this sculpture in the sources was a bit cynical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because think about it. We just mapped out a reality where a town is facing an unprecedented drought, a wildfire red alert, massive global inflation, and a dying snowpack.
It's a lot of immediate danger.
So what does this all mean? My thought was, why on earth are they throwing a birthday party and building a giant, colorful snowboarder sculpture right now? Isn't focusing on art a massive distraction from the very real emergencies at hand?
What's fascinating here is that it is easy to view public art as a luxury during a crisis.
Right, like an unnecessary expense.
Exactly. But if you analyze the psychological toll of everything we've discussed, the geopolitical anxiety from the Middle East, the environmental dread of the failing snowpack, when a community faces cascading, overlapping crises, the natural human instinct is to fracture.
Go isolate.
People tend to retreat into individual survival mode. What Vail is doing with this 60th anniversary, and specifically with this sculpture, is intentionally anchoring the community to its roots.
So they are using the history of the founders as a psychological tool.
By explicitly connecting this vibrant new artwork back to men who literally trained for mountain warfare, who survived the global devastation of World War II, and then returned to build a thriving town out of an empty, snow-covered valley.
They are reminding everyone of what they're made of.
Vail is reminding its residents of their foundational resilience. The unspoken message of the 60th anniversary is essentially, our founders survived global war and built this place against all odds. We have the capacity to survive a drought and an energy crisis. The only way down is up. The title of the sculpture suddenly makes perfect sense.
It's very intentional.
The art isn't a distraction from the crisis, it's armor. Celebrating this legacy and bringing people together for an anniversary fosters the exact type of community cohesion that is required to staff a 700-person river cleanup.
Exactly. It builds the social capital needed to weather the current economic and environmental storms.
It fortifies the people who actually have to fight the daily battles on the ground.
It really does.
Looking back at the journey of today's deep dive, it really is a masterclass in how interconnected our world has become.
So many overlapping threads. We started by unpacking how the geopolitical shockwaves of a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz immediately threaten the jet fuel that powers the local Eagle County airport, and how state funding acts as a shock absorber to keep those planes landing.
The macro hitting the micro.
Exactly. We moved into the mountains to explore a high-tech military-style response using mathematical modeling to fight an unprecedented drought and a terrifyingly early wildfire season.
Shifting from the ground to the sky.
Right. Then we saw the grassroots grid of 700 locals acting as the valley's immune system to clean the highways, and local kids breaking track records in the freezing rain.
That's stubborn resilience.
And it all culminated in a 60th anniversary celebration using public art to channel the mountain warfare roots of the valley's founders.
It is a stark reminder that local resilience is constantly being tested and shaped by macro-level global forces.
And to you listening, this is exactly why we do these deep dives. Being truly well-informed doesn't just mean knowing the isolated headlines of the day. It means seeing the hidden threads connecting them.
It's about context.
It's understanding the mechanism of how a global oil crisis halfway across the world and a local river cleanup in Colorado are actually two sides of the exact same story of adaptation.
And if I can leave you with one final thought to ponder today, building on everything we've explored in your sources.
Please do.
We live in an increasingly volatile, globally connected world. The speculative price of oil, the failure of a winter snowpack, the sudden collapse of a budget airline, these are massive systemic forces completely outside of our individual control.
We can't stop them.
We can't. So perhaps, as we look at the Eagle Valley navigating all of this, the ultimate survival tool for community isn't its wealth, and it isn't even its infrared drones or its advanced mathematical modeling.
What is it then?
Perhaps the ultimate survival tool is simply a deeply rooted, almost stubborn sense of local identity. Knowing exactly who you are and who you came from when the snow globe finally breaks.
Knowing exactly who you are when the snow globe breaks. That is a powerful thought to hold on to. Thank you so much for providing these sources and joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.